This is Marketing Uncomplicated. Hi, everybody, and welcome back. Today on Uncomplicated, we're diving into one of the biggest questions facing content creators, publishers, and marketers right now. How do you ensure authenticity in a world flooded with AI-generated content? Joining me today is Jonathan Gillham, founder and CEO of Originality.ai, a cutting-edge platform that helps website owners, content marketers, and publishers hit publish with integrity. He's also the co-founder of Motion Invest, where he helps people buy and sell content sites quickly. With more than a decade in SEO and content marketing, Jonathan saw the writing on the wall before most, predicting the rise of generative AI and the potential explosion of plagiarism before tools like ChatGPT ever hit the mainstream. Today, we're going to unpack how AI is reshaping content, what it means for SEO and Google rankings, and how you can stay ahead of the curve without compromising your brand's voice or values. Welcome to the show, John. It's really good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Do you want me to call you Jonathan or John?
Either way works, but most people go with John.
Perfect. Well, I'm really excited to get into this conversation because, interestingly enough, the New Yorker just wrote an article that was written by a non-marketer, and the headline was SEO is dead. I hate seeing things like this because SEO is not dead. Nothing dies. It just evolves, right? So let's dive in a little bit from a foundation and origin story so we can unpack a lot of the garbage that's out there and really kind of uncomplicate, for a lack of a better term. You've been in the content space long before AI content was even a hot topic. What was the moment you realized the industry needed something like originality?
Yeah, so before Originality, we had a company who sold seen this sort of wave. So we want to have these users a tool called Jasper, sort of predated ChatGPT.
I remember.
Yeah, and it was it's still around. It was clear that we struggled to be able to answer the question when our brands were using and weren't using. So we were transparently selling content to customers that knew that was content. And they were saying something, your content is just truly generative. And so that was one of the starting points of us saying there needs to be a solution for doing this kind of quality control QA/QC on content, and places and checkers were built with a primary focus on academia or on sort of one-off checks, but not for sort of publishing at reasonable volume. So we wanted to build a sort of enterprise quality control QA/QC tool for content. And just happened that we launched Originality with we're the first ever detection solution. We launched on Friday, and ChatGPT ended up launching.
That's so wild.
Yeah.
So what backend proprietary systems were you using? Because just for the sake of clarifying, how these large language models operate. A lot of people that are building things are building it off of OpenAI. So where, just from a backend tech, because I love this kind of stuff, where does your tech originate from?
Yeah, so we're a custom model. So we build it's not AI, we're calling an API from the large LLMs. And so we train, it's called a classifier. And so we train a classifier, which is a type of that trains on a bunch of human text and a bunch of AI-generated text, and learns to tell the difference between the two. And so that's sort of a core piece of technology that works, that serves as an AI detector. And then we have plagiarism checker, which doesn't involve AI, fact checker, which plugs into some couple LLMs to help with their fact checking solution, and then grammar and spell checker, which again don't use AI.
Yeah. And what is originality mostly looking for from the standpoint of, like, as you mentioned, the checker?
Yep. Yeah, so it's one of those sort of unsettling things. Like in similar sort of answer when someone asks someone at Google, why did this rank higher? You can provide some sort of general answers, but you can't sort of say explicitly, why is this higher than this? Because the AI system is a bit of a black box. And same way, if you ask sort of Sam Altman, why did OpenAI answer the question, why did ChatGPT answer this question in this way? And you can sort of talk about how the AI was built, but you can't say sort of with certainty what occurred within that black box to provide that output. And so we have some idea around highly predictable text being more likely to be identified as AI, formatted, highlighted very consistently being more likely to be AI. But those only get us to like part way there. We actually don't know, like anyone that builds an AI system, we don't know exactly why the system calls something AI versus calls it human. We know the level of accuracy that the system has based on testing it. But for any sort of one specific example, we can't say no one can say these are the sort of 5 reasons why it was identified.
Yeah, interesting. So from the standpoint of AI and SEO, because I want to dig into a little bit about this, because once ChatGPT just launched, everyone was, fast speed to market. We can now, instead of writing 1 blog a month or 2 blogs a month, we can pump these out twice a week and so on and so forth. And there was a lot of copy paste. Biggest mistake. No matter what you're doing out of AI, it's never a copy paste solution. So there's a lot of that, in terms of the AI generated content that really, I think, let's talk about how it has hurt websites and is hurting, domain authority and so on and so forth. But really, essentially, like, what's the truth from your perspective, and what does Google actually care about?
Yeah. So we've done a lot of studies looking at this. So like, does it matter if it's AI? And so we take a step back and sort of think about Google. What do they want? They need to be presenting the sort of messaging of this very AI forward company, but they are facing this existential threat where their search results are filled with nothing but AI slop. Why would anybody go to Google? They would just go to an AI that knows more about it.
Sure.
So their search results are filled with nothing but AI slop. That's an existential threat to Google and Google's cash cow. But they need to be this AI forward company because they're facing this Kodak moment where sort of the technology that they invented totally disrupts them. And so that's sort of like when you sort of understand that context that Google is facing, it makes sense their combination of messaging being this sort of AI forward, we're okay however it's created, paired with this war that they're having on AI spam. And so we've seen multiple cases where Google has done updates that I call more like PsyOps updates, where it's both an update, but also the messaging around that update is so different than what they've historically done that I think it becomes clear that these individuals like Google is really trying to drive a message home that AI spam is not going to be tolerated in their search results. And so if you're I think it's become incredibly clear, mass-produced AI content is Google absolutely hates. It's an extra threat for them, and they are going after it with vigor. If anyone is mass publishing AI content, it's only a matter of time before they their site.
So
where it gets
go ahead. Where it
I was
gets
going
gray.
to say, where it gets gray is what's mass-produced AI spam versus what is human created, AI assisted, value generating content. And I think it gets tricky to answer that. I think marketers that have been in this world can sort of understand what is truly helpful to the user. But I think that's where it gets gray. It's like human content. I think you're definitely safe. AI spam, mass produced, publishing at a high volume, you're gonna get hammered by Google. But there is a gray zone, and as there always is with SEO.
Yeah. So then here's my and thank you for that. Here's my then follow-up question to that. What then is the best practice? Is it I write the blog, I put it into SEO, and I say these are, some of the keywords that I want to add into it. Please maintain tone, structure, so on and so forth. And if they update that, is that still considered original?
So originality will identify that as AI generated.
Okay. Even if I've taken the stab at writing the whole thing first.
So I think that it depends on if I take some of my writing, I'm a terrible writer. And if I take some of my writing and I say ChatGPT and like, hey, make this better, like fix the grammar mistakes. They have to rewrite so much of it that
Yeah.
it no longer looks like my writing. I know you're a writer. Like if they took your writing went in there, ChatGPT would be like, hey, this is pretty great. I don't need to change that much, and then
Yeah.
that should still get identified as human. And so if the process of putting content into a black box of ChatGPT or any other LLM results in the outputted text no longer being recognizable to the inputted text, we believe it should be identified as AI, and that's what our tool is trained to do. And to answer sort of what's best practices when it comes to SEO, I think this is something that is evolving over time. Internally, our approach to this question is: Are we making sure that we're adding value to the user? Um, I know it's like one of those like Google answers that we all hate because it's like, what does that mean? Like, how do you go
Yeah.
deeper? And the deeper part is, can we think beyond? Can we add value beyond words? And so, if in a world where words are being produced at sort of near basically the cost of electricity, how do we as marketers compete? And I encourage our team to think beyond words. How can we add value beyond words? Is it unique data, primary research? Is it assembling of information into a presentable way by a graphic? Is it a free tool? But doing something that goes beyond the words to add value in a world where words are as cheap as the cost of electricity.
Yeah. So I'm sorry to harp on this because I think a lot of people are gonna want to know the answers to this. So if writing it first, putting it into ChatGPT, like you said, they're gonna have to edit a majority of it, then that's gonna still be considered AI written. So it's almost like then prompt ChatGPT to write it, take it out, and then humanize it. Would that still be picked up as from originality as AI written?
I think it depends on the amount
What's the
that gets
percentage
changed.
then?
So sort of we have different models that are trained at different percentages. So we have a
Yeah.
model that sort of allows for about 5% AI.
Okay.
And so that is sort of like where if you take average writer, put it into Grammarly, and accept all the changes, that sort of shapes up to be about 5% of the content has now been written by AI, and we still want to call that human. Um,
Okay.
one of sort of the work processes that people use that results in still typically identified as human content, but get some of that heavy lifting done by AI, is to work with AI in the sort of drafting, ideation, outlining stage, helping with research, pulling in some data that you can then use in your own writing. And I
Yeah.
think that is typically, if it's not taken to like, it can be so tempting to sort of, great, now write it. But in that sort of like
Mm,
workflow of writing a blog post about, writing a study about X, here's some of the things I want to cover, what's a potential outline. And so
yeah.
that ideation stage, working with AI in that ideation stage is a workflow that often results in content being correctly identified as human, but a lot of that sort of efficiency and making sure the topic is fully covered, um, benefit of working with AI gets captured.
Interesting. So then, thank you. How does Originality AI actually detect AI generated content? And obviously, I think I know the answer to this. Like, it's as a human being, I think we can pick up on some of like what the large language models in the beginning of like 2003, they sounded so unoriginal.
Yep.
So they would use a bunch of words like thriving and so on and so forth that were very like chat gpt, but and so I think today it would be really hard for a human to differentiate between AI and a human written piece of content. So how is your platform actually detecting?
Yeah. So you're exactly right that um, it is very hard for humans to identify the difference between human
Yeah.
and AI. And sort of one interesting sort of tangent related to that is, if you were to humans are overconfident at their ability to identify patterns. If you asked a room how many are better than average drivers, 80% of the room puts up their hand. And entire industries are built on humans thinking that they can recognize patterns in randomness. And so this sort of like overconfidence bias and sort of pattern recognition bias results in humans being poor at identifying AI content, but hyper overconfident in whether or not they correctly identified it or not. So studies show sort of like 60% of the time they can identify AI content correctly, but they believe that they were sort of 90% accurate in their predictions. And so that's an interesting sort of result where humans are not well positioned to identify human versus AI. The way our detector works is it's been trained to look at millions of records of human content, millions of records of AI content, and then it starts to identify patterns. And this is something that AI is very good at, but recognizing patterns in sort of complex connection points, complex data, and what those connections are, we don't know. Sort of explainable AI detection is a challenge that we're working on solving as well. And others have tried to solve it, but it's very, very challenging because you're basically asking an AI, how did you explain your thinking as to how you came to this conclusion that this was identified as AI or not? And so the way we know that our tool is accurate is that we train it, and then we have a bunch of our own data sets and a bunch of third-party available data sets of human and AI content that we then run evaluations against to see if it was likely AI or not, and we can get our accuracy from those studies.
Got it. Now, because you launched pre-ChatGPT, where were you pulling in all of your hundreds of, thousands of AI written content from?
Yeah, so ChatGPT, when it first launched, was sort of a wrapper on its own LLM, of its own GPT-3 LLM.
Yes.
And so sort of like for most of the world, so there was no generative AI, and then ChatGPT launched, and then there's generative AI. But the sort of foundational model that ChatGPT was built on was it's GPT-3. Now we're at sort of GPT-4, and soon GPT 4, 4.0, multiple versions of 4, and soon potentially GPT-5. Where we got our content from, our AI content from before ChatGPT, was directly from GPT-3 and 3.5 at the time.
Yeah. Now, thank you. That's interesting. And just for the audience and for the sake of, unpacking, can you explain the difference of, the generative AI versus the large, like just break that down for the listeners?
Yes. So most people will interact with sort of generative AI via a website like ChatGPT, Perplexity, DeepSeek, whatever sites that might be. That's in the front end, and then connected to that is the large language model. And those large language models there's multiple companies are creating different versions, and so that we have GPT 4.0, 4.1, 4.5 out of OpenAI. Claude has Opus, Sonnet, etc. And so when you work with you can work directly with the LLM by an API, so directly talking to the LLM, or you can work through the interface that those companies have created, like Claude lets you talk to the Anthropic LLMs. ChatGPT lets you interact with and generate content from the OpenAI large language models.
Got it. So let's talk a little bit then about ethical versus efficient. So for marketers and business owners trying to balance efficiency and integrity, where do you draw the ethical line when using generative AI? What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, so I think authorship was going to be kind of big deal moving forward.
I think so.
I think if you put your name behind it, I think that there's all that should matter a lot, and that's so I use it internally for sending some emails occasionally, where I'll sort of like puke my own thoughts into it, and I send a message, and it will get identified as AI generated. But it's an email from me to my internal team, and reviewed and edited and trained it to what the messaging that I want to send. But it's better dealing with words, and I like to think in spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Words, and so it's good. It helps me. think that's ethical because I'm putting my name behind it. I think where I think it's yeah, it's like it's clear. There's sort of a clearly bad, clearly good gray zone. The clearly bad is when it's being published with either no human in the loop or worse, generated persona being passed off as generated. I think that is ethical. I think sort of clearly ethical is if it's being used and someone has read every word of it, reviewed it, and put their name on it and willing to stand behind it, then I think that is ethical.
Yes, I agree. I think that one of the interesting things, just with all of the AI conversations that are coming out and, jobs, well, I wouldn't say potentially jobs becoming eliminated from AI just from the use of, how it's making things a lot faster, or, if your job was, data inputting or something like that. I mean, AI is becoming very smart. I mean, when it first came out, the mathematics that it can do now versus what it could do before is just surpassed, what I think people thought that the direction that we'd be moving in. And AI really truly is moving at a speed of light that I think predicting what the future is, even from, the folks sitting at the top, can be very egocentric, but it's the understanding of nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow, right? And so there's a lot of change that's really moving so quickly that none of us know. Um, from a content verification at scale, you know, I think that one of the things, and just to continue on what I was saying, is that more and more people are going to be looking for authenticity or originality, especially when it comes to written books. And I think we're already seeing books that are coming out that probably have been AI generated. And, the originality of, like, an author's voice and all that kind of stuff is going to be going away, but I think people are going to be craving more of that. So there's an interesting, I think, push and pull from the beauty of what AI is delivering, kind of the scariness of what AI is delivering, but then I think really going back to the foundation that maybe we've gone away from, considering, our movement into technology in general. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. I was going to say that. Yeah, it is books, especially nonfiction books, have I think a real risk of um, AI generated books being a problem, especially when we deal with hallucinations. I think if it's a kind of a kid's book about a specific sport, like I've used it at home, where it's like, hey, write a story to read that is like hyper specific to like a child that likes this, that is named X, that is into these sort of fictional creatures,
Yeah.
and it's a great way to sort of hyper personalize a totally made up story, but for a case. But we've worked with some journalists to investigate some nonfiction books that were clearly AI generated, that were dealt with really sensitive things,
Like,
foraging.
give us an example.
Yeah, so that we worked with the Guardian to look at some books that were recommending what mushrooms were safe and not safe to eat, and in the book talked about tasting it to determine if it was safe or not. Um, Obviously, potential death was the consequence
Oh my
from that
gosh.
book, and we've worked with another company to look at some uh, psychology, some sort of like mental health related books on how to deal with those topics, and that they were sort of mass AI generated.
And
Um,
these are published books?
but these are books published on Amazon.
Oh
So
my
these aren't
gosh.
necessarily like
By a
Penguin or
publisher.
Random House,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
these are self-published books on Amazon. Were the ones that we were looking at.
Yeah. And so the Guardian obviously is looking to create a story around that.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, this is just insane.
yeah.
So then on the flip side, for publishers managing large volumes of content that are at risk, what systems or routines should they put in place to verify the output consistency?
So they already have pretty good. I'd say there's sort of part of the world of like content creation that already has pretty well established editorial practices
Yeah.
where whether regardless of how it is produced, they were not prepared to take the risk of publishing something such as sort of harmful to humans as that example of the mushrooms. And so a lot of publishing and sort of news outlets are using AI detection. There was a case where those systems failed that I can share, but a lot of those companies have pretty well established editorial fact checking, multiple readers to review, and whether or not it's AI generated or human generated, craft's not going to get through that system. And so, regardless of how it gets produced, it's AI detection is less important to them because they care about an output that they can stand behind.
Yeah.
Um, an example where sort of that system failed was there was a writer that used AI to create a summer reading list, and it got published in a bunch of major outlets, outlets like the Chicago Sun, and 10 of the 15 books didn't even exist. So the AI had just hallucinated and made up 10 summer books that didn't exist.
Yeah. That's wild. So the last time because as a marketer, I like to stay up to trends on, all the different types of tools that are, coming out. And as I like to say, I think with AI, it's growing like gremlins. And from the last number, I think it was 15.5 thousand. So 15,000 and a half. Yeah, 15,500 tools that are out there currently. So I think that marketers as well as business owners are overwhelmed by the number of tools. What
Yeah.
makes originality.ai different or essential in that stack?
Yeah. So I think we are the only complete QA/QC tool built for people publishing content on the web.
And
Um,
define QA/QC tool.
so quality control, quality assurance. So
Thank you.
receiving a piece of text, and we have AI detection, plagiarism checking, fact checking, grammar and spelling, and readability checking. So that's sort of complete and SEO optimization. So that's sort of like complete suite of what an editor does when they receive a piece of text from a writer.
Yeah.
We are a complete solution to help them do their job in a way that they wouldn't be able to because of the AI detection they can't do themselves. Plagiarism detection similarly, and then helps with the fact checking, proofreading, and all those things. So we have sort of chosen to fit in this one very specific window in the marketing workflow around an editor receiving content from a writer and needing to review it and make sure it meets their requirements.
Who are your top five? Who are the top five industries or people that you work with?
Yeah, so marketers, so anybody that's sort of has a team of one or two writers that work on a website producing content to get ranked in Google. So that's sort of marketers. Larger publishing houses that sort of rolled out multiple websites. And then we have AI data labeling is kind of an interesting one. Those companies use us.
Mm-hmm.
Academic institutions, we don't love that use case, but they
Oh,
use us.
why?
And then
Why do you not love that?
the AI textures are highly accurate, but not perfect. And so our latest
Yeah.
models are 99.9% accurate on straight ChatGPT produced content, but it has about a 0.5% false positive rate. And so across a large enough sample size, that's incorrectly calling human content AI content about 0.5% of the time, and that causes real harm. And because we don't have this sort of, there is no path to being explainable in terms of why this content was identified as AI, that results in a lot of real pain on a single piece of content, whereas writers and marketers are set up with more of a professional relationship to be able to sort of manage if false positives were to occur. And so that's why we don't love it within sort of academic disciplinary situations. We don't love it being used there. And then writers use us a lot because a lot of writers will work with AI, to help create content, but they want to make sure that their content is still identified as human.
So walk us through like that process. So the writer writes the content, they go into Originality. What is that process?
Yeah, so they copy paste content into Originality, similar to the way they would have with the plagiarism checker, and then they receive a score, whether or not it's likely AI, likely human, and then they receive highlighted text. So that highlighted text will show what part of the text is triggering the AI to think it is AI generated, and so that's sort of the actionable piece of information for the writer to then go and say, oh yeah, that paragraph, that's right. I did sort of, I maybe did copy a couple sentences from ChatGPT. The rest is all mine, but that paragraph I kind of did. Those FAQ they kind of directly quote from ChatGPT, and it got identified as AI, and they can go and rewrite that if they don't want it to be identified as AI.
Don't you think that it's interesting that only 5% needs to be changed?
So sometimes it's so we have different models with different thresholds. There are some use cases where people want to say 0% AI, and then we have a model called Turbo that is sort of 0% AI, and then we have our standard model, which allows for that sort of like 5% editing, to 5% to be AI, and it still gets called human. I think this is I think it's a question that we don't want to be the ones deciding. What is acceptable for you and your writers might be different for our team and our writers. We need to design the tool at a threshold, but what is that sort of like acceptable threshold? We wish it was like perfectly tunable, and you could just set whatever threshold you wanted. That's not, unfortunately, it's not the way the models work. 5%. It's like, is that the right answer? Not certainly not for everyone. So what is the right threshold? Depends on the use case.
Interesting. Yeah, I think we're going to see I think that percentage is probably going to go up a lot more.
You think it's going to be like the acceptable level of AI is going to be higher than 5%?
No, I think the acceptable level of human editing, I'm looking at it from the reverse side, that the human level editing needs to be a higher percentage. So yes, like written content needs to be at a higher percentage, and AI threshold is going to go, I meant to say, much lower.
Right. Got it.
And obviously it's like Google is gonna be determining that just based on probably their war with Microsoft. So
it's interesting for sure. I have how search results are going to look, and we have a study that's analyzing sort of the percent of search results that are AI generated versus human generated, and comparing that to other platforms. And Google is absolutely suppressing AI content more aggressively than other platforms. Other platforms that are optimizing for engagement, like LinkedIn, 50%, 60% of long form content is AI generated. Google, it looks more like kind of 20% is AI generated. So they're clearly sort of suppressing it.
Now, is LinkedIn suppressing it as well?
No. No, I think most platforms that are, so not that I know with certainty, but I think from conversations, and it's pretty clear that they are not. Social media platforms are optimizing for engagement, and they believe that they're sort of their own internal AI and algorithms to try and sort of optimize what content gets surfaced based on engagement. They are confident enough in that they say, is give us all the crap, and our algorithms, the more we have to choose from, the more likely we are to deliver the right piece of content that results in engagement. And so they're sort of heavily relying on their engagement metric capabilities as opposed to sort of an early filter around AI or human.
It's an interesting duality between, the large language models being so helpful in kind of the written content, but then, a lot of the iron fist of, no, we want human written content. So it's just going to be interesting to see how it continues to play out.
For sure. Like there are platforms that are saying, we're by humans for humans. We don't want to.
Yeah.
Sort of Reddit has sort of said that. Whether or not they're being effective is another question. Medium has very clearly said that, and multiple sort of newsletter platforms have said, you're not going to get AI. We're not going to be sending AI spam this platform.
Yeah, it's amazing. So let's talk about buying and selling content with your company, Motion Invest, which you are a co-founder of. How has the rise of AI changed what buyers look for in content sites? Is it harder to prove value now?
So we ran a study that looked at so Motion Invest is a marketplace where people can buy and sell websites that are making money. We sort of that company sort of positions itself on the sort of smaller side, sort of in that like $1,000 to $100,000 price point for websites that are making money. And
You mean
what we
like
have
just
seen,
buying like e-commerce businesses? Okay.
so e-commerce, or we don't focus on e-commerce, but content sites that are making money from Google Ads or
Ah,
affiliate
okay. Yeah.
platform. Um, we have seen a pretty sizable discount being applied to websites that all their content is AI generated, and so buyers are highly skeptical of the future sustainability of the income that a website is generating if that website has published all AI content. And so that's like a 30 to 40% discount that we've seen at times between AI generated website and a
Or
human
human.
generated website. That is all else being equal, just that being the difference. There's a pretty sizable discount that gets applied to AI generated sites. And so I think it's something. It's sort of one more. Anytime you're buying a business, it's like you're buying the future cash flows of that business, and those future cash flows become less certain when you're relying on traffic from Google
Yeah.
and you have published AI content.
Got it. That's interesting. Do you think that people are still buying the websites that are AI?
Yeah, but I think if the discount is sufficient, if they're not, maybe they have a different view on the risk than somebody
Mhm.
else. The income is real that those sites are driving currently. How long they stick around for is certainly a question mark.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting to see even like 6 months from now what that what the conversation would be.
Yeah.
So, with regards to future proofing strategy, what practical steps can small businesses and solopreneurs take today to protect the rankings and reputation against the AI tide?
Yeah, I think so. Step one is to have a policy. Sounds more formal than it needs to be, but at least an internal decision being made on where AI is allowed to be and not allowed to be used. Worst case scenario is that you turn your marketing over to somebody that just geeks in on AI and unleashes it across your entire platform, and you can lose your entire business. That's sort of like the worst case. And so if you're the risk owner of the traffic to your site, then you should be the one making the decision on where and how it gets used and applied. And so sort of having that policy, making that decision on where it gets used, and then communicating that to the team, and then controlling with a tool like Originality to sort of spot check when it doesn't get used. And I think the sort of how do we so that's I'd say like the policy piece on like have a policy, make sure that policy is being followed with the use of a tool like Originality. How do you win in this world? And I think that the key for marketers is to think beyond words, and how can you deliver a piece of content, an asset into the world that delivers value beyond simply the words that are on the page.
Yeah.
And I think those are the kind of the keys to winning in this world right now.
Hmm. What's the most surprising insight or trend you've uncovered lately about AI content and site performance?
Um, we've been doing a lot of analysis around AI overviews and whether or not AI content performs as well in AI overviews. Um, and what we've seen is that Google has this sort of front filter on their search results, not having much AI content. Most of their search results, most of their AI overview sources are being cited based from within their search results. And so, but once a piece of content is in those search results, they're just as likely to be decided whether or not it was AI or human. And I think that is, and then we looked at that specifically for your money, your life sensitive content, and that stayed the same. And so what we're seeing is that AI overviews are citing and being grounded by AI generated content. And that creates this sort of hallucination bias feedback loop where this, there's some common saying around like the snake is eating its own tail,
Yeah.
where AI overviews are generating their answer based on AI content in the search results at the same likelihood as human content once it's in the search results. AI content is less likely to get into those search results, but once it's in there, then the AI overview is just as likely to ground its answer based on that content, which I think is going to have some real consequences long term. Where if AI is simply grounding itself on AI, then we will have a sort of a bias feedback loop.
Sure.
That'll be a problem.
Yeah. I know we talked about having an ego by predicting the future, but where do you see the intersection of content marketing and AI going over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's going to continue to. I think we have these we have clarity on human content's good, AI spam bad, and I think where the gray zone in between those two, there's AI generated content that's good. I think there's got not all AI content is spam, but all spam in 2025 is AI generated, and so I think there's going to be this sort of increased understanding on what is acceptable and not acceptable usage of AI within that content creation process, and people will be coming to more agreements internally on that. I think that's a sort of I guess a bit of a vague answer, but I think Google will continue to suppress and fight AI spam. They have to, otherwise they no reason for them to exist.
The whole game of SEO is just completely out the window almost,
Yeah. I mean, geo will certainly matter, and I think SEOs are good at evolving. That's Google has not been ranking. Google has not been a consistent activity for the last 15 years. That has been the 20 years. That has been a changing game this entire time, and now it's just a different game, but it's the same sort of effort to understand what does and doesn't rank, and how do you put your content the best foot forward with your content and company so that you get mentioned.
Yeah, because it's not that GEO is replacing SEO; it's just supplemental in terms of the evolvement of it.
Yeah. It is right now. If Google were to die, that would be a different story. But certainly that is the. I think right now it is both, and they are similar to one another. Maybe SEO decreases and GEO increases. But I don't know.
I don't think SEO is ever gonna. I don't think Google is ever gonna die.
Yeah.
Unless ChatGPT becomes the next Google, right? We don't know. Because honestly, looking for things in ChatGPT is so much more concise than it is in Google these days. So.
Right.
Yeah. Well, John, this has been so informative. Thank you so much. We're going to link originality.ai below, your LinkedIn, as well as your other company, Motion, so that Motion Invest, so that people can, click on it, look into it more, and discover what it's all about. I think originality.ai everyone should be using, marketer, small business owner, so on and so forth. So any last words before we get into the fun part of the fireside chat?
No, been a fun chat, so appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. So we have a couple of questions. This is tradition that we do towards the end. So anything that comes to mind for these questions, just go ahead and answer them. What's one piece of tech you wish you could uninvent?
Glass, any spot like
the Ray-Ban, like Google glasses.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, I think so. Privacy can of worms that scares me right now more than excites me.
100% agree. What's a lesson you learned the hard way, but now you're grateful for?
It's been in search, it's been in marketing for a lot of years. I think always was chasing, or maybe first few years was sort of chasing what's the hack, what's the shortcut, and I think there's just no shortcut beyond adding value to users. I think that's something that I wish I would have been great to have saved a few
Move
years.
on. Yeah, I like that. If you weren't working in SEO, publishing, or tech, what would you be doing instead?
Ski coaching,
You would ski
ski
coaching.
coach, yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Where's
that which I do anyways, but yeah,
yeah.
that might be it.
Where's your favorite place to ski?
I don't know. Lots.
Everything, everyone, every hill is different.
Every hill's different. Every hill's fun. Whistler's great. Zermatt in Europe has been a lot of fun to be at.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
they
agree.
all
I
have
agree.
some vibes.
Totally. Well, thank you, John, so much. This has been a lot of fun, and yeah, appreciate your time and digging into all of this juicy details.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Sasha.